Thank you. The question now arises on third reading and final passage of Senate Bill 99A. Representative Smith Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I am excited to bring to you this bill with a fantastic relating to clause, and it makes me think of more things I want to add to it before we move this bill all the way through. Just kidding. Colleagues, as a regular bike commuter during my non-session part of my life, I am very happy to bring you Senate Bill 998, also known as the Idaho Stop Rule. It comes from your House Rules Committee with a 5-2 vote and was passed out of the Senate back when they were working over there, 21-8 with bipartisan support. This bill allows a bicyclist approaching an intersection with a stop sign or flashing red light to basically treat those like yield signs and proceed through the intersection after the bicyclist takes certain precautions. Senate Bill 998 addresses a usability rule with riding bikes in an urban environment. Commuter bike traffic in Oregon cities will frequently cross residential neighborhood intersections with stop signs. Unlike driving a vehicle where you can simply move your foot on the pedals, bikers are constantly starting and stopping under their own physical effort. Bicyclists have a greater visual peripheral range than drivers in vehicles when approaching intersections. Typically, at most residential neighborhood intersections, bicyclists can safely slow their speed down to a manageable speed when approaching intersections, and using their peripheral visual range, they can safely determine whether they need to come to a full stop or proceed through the intersection without fully stopping. In addition, this bill accounts for specific scenarios where safety concerns come into play. It creates new Class D traffic violations for inappropriate behavior by a bicyclist in an intersection. These violations, hence the relating to clause, carry a maximum fine of $250 and include failing to yield to traffic within an intersection, failing to yield to traffic so close as to constitute an immediate hazard, disobeying a police officer or flagger, failing to exercise care to avoid an accident, and failing to yield the right of way to a pedestrian. The University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health conducted a study on the impacts of the law that was passed in Idaho. That study, available on OLIS, found that there was no change in injury or death rate for cyclists following the adoption of the Idaho-style law. There were some discussions in committee about the perspective on this bill from law enforcement. The Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police and Oregon State Sheriff's Association shared the following comment. While our law enforcement traffic safety folks have concerns about Senate Bill 998A, there are studies that indicate that the law could actually improve bicycle safety. The bill places the entire burden for good decision-making on the bicyclists, who must proceed through a flashing red light or stop sign safely. The bill creates new violations for failure to safely navigate these situations. We believe that it will be important for this new law to be carefully monitored to determine if it is resulting in positive outcomes in terms of safety for both bicyclists and motorists. So in addition to the more than 50 letters in support that you'll find on OLIS, many constituents and advocacy groups have reached out to my office in support of this legislation, and I hope that you will join me today in voting aye on Senate Bill 998. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Gorsuch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
So, colleagues, I'm concerned about this bill. I don't know if you've driven in a lot of urban areas. Certainly Portland is a good example where you have cars and buses and trucks and skateboards and rollerbladers and now these zipping, whatever they are. What are they? Scooters, there we go. I think when you consider how hazardous it is for motor vehicles to try and drive around places like Portland, and their concern about reducing traffic accidents, that this is probably something that's problematic at best. And I would urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Mr. Speaker, we've been told over and over again, bicycles can do this and that because we're all equal, the same as a car. Everything's equal. Now we're going to go to Animal Farm, and some vehicles are more equal than others. And I'm concerned that if I'm driving a car, and many people who may not be familiar with this law that don't sit here in this building and hear it, will assume a bicycle is going to stop. And if it doesn't, there it could be bad result of that. And I would suggest suggest a no vote on this bill as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Holdy.
Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
And I can tell you from my minimal bike experience, as I tried to explain in committee, and I've seen this with kids, quite frankly, and I've experienced it myself. I'm coming up a very, very slight incline, and I don't have an 18-speed bicycle, I've got something a little more modest than that. I come to a full stop, I look both ways, no traffic. Trying to get going, making it across the intersection. By the time I get to the other side, there's cars bearing down, honking their horns, because I'm not fast enough to get across the damn street. So I say that, in a little jest, but this is really true. And I've seen it with kids, who, get ready, it's clear, let's go. And cars come, down. And this law really doesn't create any sort of safe harbor for bicycle riders. It makes them yield in every scenario that this bill changes. When you're at a stop sign, they still have to yield. And, it is the bicyclist that really is the one that's at risk here, not the automobiles. The bicyclist has the most interest in being safe. And I would submit to you that it's safer, at least for me and some of the kids I know, to basically be able to roll through with a little bit of momentum if it's safe. So I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
It appears now that the good representative from the Emerald Empire has spoken that I have many, many, many more hours of experience in the saddle than he does. And so I feel qualified to comment on this bill. I actually have spent many hundreds of hours on a bicycle, both in urban and in rural situations. And I take to heart the cautionary comments of Representative Gorsuch and Representative Barker, particularly when it comes to safe travel in urban areas. But I wanted to just note that bicycling as a commuter activity and as a sport in this state has grown markedly in the past decade or so. And bicyclists take their role on the road very seriously. And they are taught to be aware of everything that's around them, to, in all respects, ride predictably so that the cars around them can understand their motions, to be responsible and courteous, and to watch out for themselves. So I don't think that we are interjecting a law into an environment where we should assume that bicyclists are unaware or careless. They are already doing what they should to create a safe environment around themselves as they are on the road. I think we can count on them to use this new ability responsibly. And I would suggest that the science is right here. When the bicyclists are in motion and they are taking account of the environment around them, they can move comfortably and safely through intersections and other obstacles. I think we can give this one a yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Noble.
Thank you very much. To the bills.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I'm concerned about this. Although I understand the rationale, I could apply the same rationale when I ride a motorcycle, very aware of my surroundings, in fact, hyper aware. And there are times when there is no traffic and it'd sure be nice to just ignore the traffic control device and make my way through. Similar to, and I've had the opportunity to drive a patrol car in the middle of the night where the streets are bare, and it would be nice to disregard the traffic signals. I think this applies in most circumstances when people are paying attention. Yeah, my experience in traffic accidents, they don't happen really when people are paying attention. They happen when people don't pay attention. Bicycles, motorcycles, other vehicles of the road. I think this needed to have a little more vetting. Should have probably gone through a normal process of judiciary or the Joint Transportation Committee as opposed to a gut and stuff. I would urge us to give us a chance to look at this maybe in a more thorough manner and urge a no vote today.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative McLean.
To the bill.
Discussion, Representative Findlay.
To the bill.
To the bill.
You made that line. So, Mr. Speaker, if we're only adults riding bicycles and we taught, well, you can ride through, blow through intersections, that's probably fine. But that's not the only people that ride bicycles. We teach our kids to ride bikes. So if we're going to teach them, you can blow through intersections without paying attention. I think we're setting ourselves up for problems. This has not been vetted by the safety folks. This has not been vetted by the law enforcement folks. And if we're basing our stuff in the 6 months that I've been here, we're talking about, well, Idaho, I've never heard that before. I mean, we're always talking about Washington does all this or California does all this, but we've never wanted to be like Idaho. And that just shocks the heck out of me that we're now wanting to be like Idaho when we're going to teach our kids to blow through stop signs and red lights. I do not think that's a good idea. I encourage a no vote.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Smith Warner, you wish to close?
Yes, please, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, thank you for the debate on this bill this afternoon. I want to point out a couple of really important items. This bill is in no way authorizing a disregard of traffic signals or an ignoring or a disregard or a blowing through. This, if you read, it is treating a stop sign as a yield sign. There is still a responsibility by the bicyclist. I got to tell you, as a bike rider, and those of you who have, if you've done any small amount of bike riding in any sort of urban area, one of the other important things this will do is this will move bikes off of more main roads and move them to these smaller roads, because the way this will basically make it easier for bikes to ride through neighborhood areas with stop signs without having to come to the full stop off and on every time. It's going to move bikes off of more trafficy roads. It is going to continue to have that legal requirement on those bike riders to treat those four-way stops and stop signs as yield signs, and still have, and not only give them the legal responsibility of going through that, but create these new violations. So if they are violating them, there is restitution. It is going to put the onus on the bikers. And I just want to say, with all due respect, or whatever it is, to Idaho, again, this is policy that's been in effect for over 30 years there, that there have been actual safety studies. This is a bill that did go through a process, and that process was in Senate Judiciary and Senate Rules, and then it came over to House Rules. And that is a process that many bills in this legislature go through. That's a committee that works and hears bills. So on behalf of all of the bicyclists in this state and in each of your districts, I would urge an aye vote.